Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everybody who's joined us this afternoon. This is our second online discussion for people who've been shielding and their families. My name's Councillor Rob Appleyard. I'm the Cabinet Member for Adult Services within Bath and North East Somerset Council. We have a number of guests with us this afternoon, including two people, Jackie and Craig, who were identified as clinically extremely vulnerable. At our last session, Jackie spoke of her experiences of shielding and how she's managed in dealing with the challenges in her daily life. The feedback from the last discussion was very positive, and we are very grateful for Jackie and Craig, who have both agreed to join the panel this afternoon and continue the conversation. We understand that everyone's experience of shielding and those who are continuing to do so varies greatly. And while shielding ended on the 1st of April, we know that for many people, their lives haven't changed a great deal. Today's session focuses on what's next after shielding and what support is available. During the discussion, if you would like to ask a question to any of the panelists, please pop it into the chat and we'll try and get round to answering as many of these as we possibly can. The chat function can be found at the bottom of your screen on the menu bar. Just type in your message, and if we can provide an answer straight away, my colleagues will respond, and any questions to the panel, we will try and get through as many as possible at the end. Internet connections and technical issues can sometimes cause disruption, certainly on online discussions. We will do our best to ensure we will deal with any problems quickly as they arise, so please do bear with us. The first panelist I would like to invite to speak is Kate Morton from Bath Mind, and also chair of 3SG, which is a large network of our third sector groups. Bath Mind has played a crucial role in the hub during the pandemic to support people who have found this time particularly difficult and stressful. There's been an increase in mental health and isolation during the pandemic, and for many people, reconnecting with the outside world has increased anxiety. And for many people reconnecting, and Kate is also going to provide some practical suggestions and explain what support is available from their services. So I'll just hand over to Kate. Welcome, Kate.
Welcome, thanks, Rob, and good afternoon, everybody. As Rob said, my name is Kate Morton. I'm the Chief Executive of Bath Mind and also the chair of the third sector group, which gives a voice to a number of third sector or voluntary community and social enterprise organisations across Bath and North East Somerset. And Bath Mind provide a range of services, not only to people with diagnosed mental health issues, but also the wider support to people with their health and wellbeing needs. And our focus is often on people at the very early stages of their support needs, where they need help, but also in their recovery as well. So we try and kind of cover the whole of their journey. As Rob said, we know that the last year has been unprecedented for all of us, but for those of you shielding, it must be extremely challenging. And we're seeing that as we're coming out of lockdown, as people are being vaccinated, as the streets are becoming incredibly busy, businesses are opening, for some of us, there's a feeling there's a light at the end of the tunnel. However, I imagine for shielders, it's anything but that, and it's not a place to celebrate. And I imagine that isolation feels doubly difficult. It felt last year that we were, there was a common experience, we were in this together, and I suspect now it feels a little bit like we're out of step with each other. So I suspect that's quite a tricky place to be for people. And I know that our coping mechanisms have been compromised as a result. I think it's really, really important that we look after ourselves and that we can ensure there is support there, both to self-manage, but also to look at how we can develop strategies going forward. And I know that in the last webinar, I talked about some of these very practical steps, but I still think even though as we come out of lockdown, they really, really are relevant. I won't talk about sleep and diet and exercise and all the things that we've heard extensively about elsewhere, but just some very practical issues that maybe we want to think about and some suggestions. Thinking about framing your day and avoid being in one place for too long, and where possible, be mobile. And I don't mean exercising, I just mean moving around as much as possible, a little bit more regularly. Structuring your day is going to be really key as we go through this next 6 months, looking at building in some quality time, some you time, quiet time, whether that's relaxation techniques, meditation, mindfulness. I know we talked a lot about that with Jackie at the last webinar. And taking time in your day for you to do something that you enjoy is really, really essential. And I think even more so now is reducing our information overload. It feels to me as though, even though we're coming out of lockdown, the information, social media is almost even worse. And I think we need to really structure that and watch how much we watch and how much we listen to. Lastly, but obviously most importantly, is making those connections with people where possible. And I know that is really, really challenging for people who are within their own space and remain within their own space. And whether that's making a phone call, whether that's talking to a family member, a friend, even a neighbour, if that's possible, it is that first step to the recovery, and making those conversations really matter. We are approaching Mental Health Awareness Week on the 10th of May. And this year the focus is on nature and the environment. And I think where possible, we need to reconnect with the outside world and with the natural environment. If you're unable to do that, if you don't have any outside space, I think even just 10-15 minutes sitting by an open window and just letting that air come in, just being part of that outside world, really, really will make a difference. It's like a reset button. I think it's really, really essential. But I think what we all need to remember is that this is about your reality and your experience and how you're feeling. I don't think we can tell you that because shielding has ended that you should be out and about. I think it's about listening to you and what your needs are and how we can support you to adapt and rebuild and reconnect. As Rob said, there are some services and support out there for people. For you, we have the Community Wellbeing Hub, Bath Mind, and many other local services can help you to navigate what is quite a complex area. Some ideas that we can provide you with. We've got some wellbeing packs for those of you who are more digitally excluded and struggle with online access to services. There is the phone support at the hub, where that's the befriending calls or some general advice information. There are many online support groups out there. Again, we can give you some information after this. A range of support groups, a range of creativity groups, gardening workshops, food workshops, a whole range, singing. There are lots and lots of activities out there. And those of you who want to start thinking about the first steps to being back outside, leaving that front door, there is some services across Bath and North East Somerset where we can work with you and walk alongside you to help you make those first steps. I think having the right support and the right information at the right time is going to be absolutely key. And talking to somebody as well in a safe space that gives you time is going to be absolutely essential to make that first step. Just finally, I'd say it's critical for you that you're heard. It's critical that we know you're heard and that we know that you know that you're not alone. The support for you is holistic. So it's not just about your physical health needs. It's wrapping it around to the whole of you. And so we can look at the team around you. Trust is essential. And I think giving yourself and allowing yourself permission for you to determine your next steps is going to be really, really key. And creating that confidence and feeling comfortable about making those next steps and sharing those fears, concerns, hopes. So we really, really are starting those conversations and we're being really honest and open. Where relevant, as I've said earlier, involve family members and friends and carers. And I think we need to redress that balance that we've had over the last year, which has been quite a contactless society. And how do we look at creating meaningful connections, but also learning from the positive experience we've had in the last year, where that digital solution has been a real benefit for many people. And maybe there's a hybrid approach that we need to look at going forward, not just the physical connectivity, but also how we can work together in a digital space so that those people who can't get out and don't want to get out do have options of support that isn't just that physical connection. That's something that's really, really important. And I don't know whether considering a mutual WhatsApp group, for example, would be useful for shielders. Again, I think we talked about that at the last webinar, and to look at sharing experiences. And I think being able to say it's okay not to be okay is really, really key. I think lastly, it's important that you're kind to yourself, you give yourself that time. And I think we all need to remember the importance of that collective joy going forward.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I must admit, I know from my position, I am deeply appreciative of the work not only yourselves and your colleagues and all the other sector charities do to actually provide that like virtual comfort blanket around so many of our residents in so many different ways. So please extend our thanks to them on that. I'd like now to welcome Jackie Head and Craig Vale. And Jackie's joined us from our last discussion, and they have given me permission just to sort of just give a little bit of background of where they're coming from. Now, Jackie is a local resident from Vale. 3.5 years ago, her life changed dramatically from being the head of counselling at Bristol University, a mum of 3, a runner, and active in her community, to being disabled through chronic ill health. Because of her lupus community diagnosis, additional health complications, and her immunosuppressant, why do people put so long words in for me? Thank you. Medication, she's been shielded for over a year. Jackie has told us it's been tough, but I've learned a lot and now feel well adapted to these rather crazy circumstances. Craig Vale is a local resident from the Summer Valley and was diagnosed with primary myelofibrosis in December 2009. This is a rare blood cancer, is more commonly associated with people in their 60s. So there is little information and support for someone in their 30s. Recently married, running a successful road safety company, and in the middle of renovating a Victorian house, everything changed from that point, not just for Craig. The chronic fatigue and bone pain forced him to make some drastic changes and focus on his disabilities. Craig said to us, shielding has been a challenge, especially the isolation and lack of contact. I couldn't have done it without the support of my family and friends. I'm quite anxious about what the future will hold. Thank you very much for both of you for joining us. And I suppose I'll ask Craig first, if you'd like to kick off really, is what was your reaction when you received notification that shielding was coming to an end at the end of March?
It was one of fear, really, I guess. And I think Kate hit it on the head a little earlier, where she said, you know, with previous lockdowns, it was felt that we were all kind of in it together. But now we're in this new stage, and when the restrictions are lifted, you do kind of feel that people that were previously shielding are kind of on their own and a little bit kind of left behind. So for me, it was, yeah, I was pleased for friends and family that we were moving forwards, but a lot of anxiety, I suppose, in exactly what will happen and how we will move forwards, and a little bit of fear that we move forwards too quickly and then have to come backwards again.
Okay. Did you have similar thoughts, Jackie? You're on mute, Jackie.
I'm on mute.
See, I've got to be able to say that at least one sort of time.
I've got that out the way for you. I think I was very thrown because I've been having a lot of conversations with my medical team about trying to get them to second guess when I would come out of shielding, and they'd been saying, oh, it won't be for ages yet, and I said, will it be after I've had the second vaccine? Well, no, not in your case, I don't think it will. And then suddenly out came this news, and I felt really thrown and also quite angry because it sort of felt like some shielders, those who have to work in a workplace, might be really struggling with fear going back into that. That wasn't my scenario, obviously, but I sort of felt angry about that. I think the other thing was I felt like lots of people then said to me, oh, great, you're going to be coming out of shielding. And then I individually had to work out, well, actually, you know, how do I balance what I've got from the government and what I've got from my medical team? And so I had to have lots of conversations with the medical team, with my family, until I arrived at my own sense of what needed to happen next.
Did you, when you said about your family, I mean, did you find that the family how did they respond to these changes?
I think the thing to bear in mind, a bit like every shielder's different, every family member can be different as well. So, and in a way, it depends on a number of factors. You know, so I've got one son in London who was very influenced by what was happening in London and the risk levels in London, and was sort of saying, "Are you sure?" You know, and sort of narrowing the piece. And then someone else in the family who doesn't go out so much and is in a safer region was sort of saying, well, surely you can go out now, can't you? And so there was a difference between different people that you have to kind of reconcile and work through.
And was your situation similar to that, Craig, with your family, how they viewed the changes?
Yeah, definitely. And some of my family living in quite rural areas, and as Jackie said, you know, to them it was, well, surely it's all safe now, you can just carry on. But it was very much about, you know, yeah, talking with the family and deciding how we were going to try and personalize these new restrictions to suit me and my condition. And yeah, having those conversations with medical professionals and making sure that, you know, that the decisions I was making were balanced with some element of risk.
So you didn't go back. So you didn't go back to your normal routine then?
No, I mean, for me, I did go outside, but you know, I didn't suddenly start meeting family and friends. I still don't go into shops. You know, we have all our shopping delivered direct to home, medications delivered to home. But we do now venture outdoors as a family, which we weren't doing before. But obviously that's tempered with a lot of caution. And I don't suddenly, you know, have any desire to go to a busy city centre like Bristol or Bath. I would very much go to a quiet, you know, rural area, avoiding places where lots of people are going to gather. So yeah, it's the family were obviously pleased that some changes were afoot, but you know, they were, my wife especially was kind of sensible enough to say, well, hold on a minute, this is a kind of blanket decision. Let's have a think and let's understand, you know, what it means for you as an individual.
And do you think it's quite difficult for younger members of the family to actually understand the changes?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a young son, he's only 8, and whilst he's pretty switched on and he understands what's happened, you know, it's been difficult for him. And, you know, he now wants to go and see his friends, he's back at school. So for him, life has returned to normal. And we had a family, not party, but we had a family event recently. And you know, he wanted to go, but I couldn't go, and we had to kind of be very careful how we managed that, because whilst I wanted him to, you know, get back to normality and for him to be able to join in and see people that he's not seen for a while, we had to sort of take a step back and say, well, you know, I can't do that, so we need to just be very careful how we approach it.
Okay. And what sort of steps have you taken, Jackie, to sort of try and sort of re-engage and get back to normality?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things to say is because I'm on immunosuppressants, the vaccine, there's been government advice that the vaccine is less effective, so that kind of also influences my choices. But some of the things I've been doing, so I've started to go on one-to-one walks with friends, both wearing masks. I started doing that in the village, and then a week ago I drove myself outside of my village, and that felt like a huge step. I met with somebody and went around their area for a walk, you know, just one-to-one. And then we got back to the garden and we sat, I felt like miles apart, but took our masks off. And that was an incredible moment, actually, because I realized I really haven't had face-to-face mask off contact this year. So that was a big deal. But the other thing that's really helped, my son is at school and he is therefore being tested twice a week with these I forget what they're called, lateral flow tests? I don't, yeah. And so we have to do them as a family as well. And so on a Tuesday evening, we all do the test together in our separate spaces. We all shout down, "I haven't got COVID," and then we meet and have supper together. And that has been fabulous. And the next day we have to go back to meal shielding again, but just to have those 2 nights in the week where we can actually join together has been just lovely, really lovely. And we also had a meeting with some other family members in our garden because we knew that everybody will have had a test done on that day. So we had a garden meeting far apart and all the rest of it, but that was really lovely. But I think one of the things I'd say, I think it's partly about circumstances outside of you. It's partly about your own medical condition or personal condition. And it's also about how risk averse you are, I think. So I think if you think about any risk, if all the time we take risks, if I get in my car, I take a risk. If I cross the road, I take a risk. But most of those risks, I've sort of risk assessed as it's okay. I'll make sure I put my seatbelt on, or I'll make sure I drive carefully, but I'm going to get in a car. And in some ways, we allow those fears to go in the background because we've got rules that we make. I won't get into a car when I'm drunk. I won't get into a car when I'm not well enough or whatever. And in a way, I think you kind of have to do the same for coming out of shielding. You have to work out for yourself, what are my rules? And one of my rules is I won't go on a walk unless both people will wear a mask. And people have to understand that. And I won't go on a walk unless the other person has told me if they're infectious in any way. And then we'll cancel it. So it's your own rules that you can then almost forget.
So it's also very important that people outside maybe our immediate family and that recognise and trying to help us to make those adjustments, because it's very easy for people that haven't been shielded or anything like that. And I must admit, personally, I'm totally aware of the challenges, because my wife shielded for nearly the year, and it took a lot to sort of make those adjustments. So I can understand that, but I know we appreciated the support of friends by not putting pressure on to sort of do things which they found were okay, but there was anxieties on that side of it. Okay, that's really good. So what advice would you give to other people that have been shielding and anxious about the reconnecting then? Craig?
Well, I would advise that obviously they balance very carefully the government advice with their own personal circumstances. I think it's really important to engage with the people that know you from a health point of view. So your GP, if you have a good relationship there, and also your hospital team. I know for myself personally, I've had a few conversations with my haematologist to understand their impressions of what I should be doing. And I think also if there is a specific charity or support group that's very particular to your own illness or disability, it's worth engaging with them. I've used a service called MPN Voice, and I've found them to be really useful in providing some advice, and also just speaking to other people that have the same condition can sometimes give you that bit of reassurance that you're not alone, and that the fears that you've got other people have, but also just sharing experiences of other people and understanding that people all around you can have fears and worries about moving forwards. But I think it is about risk. It's about not going crazy. And we've all worked so hard for the last year. It would be such a shame to spoil it now. So I think it's really important that we support each other, and just make absolutely sure that we're doing things that are good for us, good for our families, and good for the country as a whole.
Good. Thank you. And I suppose it's very important to recognise and accept the fact that, you know, there are other people we can talk to. As you said, you've got the support group. We've got the Wellbeing Hub. I mean, I know some of the work the Wellbeing Hub is nothing to do with food deliveries or picking up medicines. It's just having that conversation, just making that connection and opening up, where it's quite easy to think that, you know, you're the only person with these challenges in those particular ways, but there are many people that are similar, and so it's a shared journey, isn't it? Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, what I would like to do is, while we're talking about the Wellbeing Hub, is invite Joe Scammell and Cllr Thorogood to talk about the continued support available at the hub for people who have been shielding, and those vulnerable people, also the provisions in place and when relocated. So thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you very much, Craig, and that. And welcome to Joe and to Cllr. Joe is the head of commissioning at the Wellbeing at Virgin Care, and Cllr is head of contracting and performance at the council. They were the driving force behind the development of the hub and the COVID-19 response, as well as trying to ensure most of our all of our commission services continue to operate, albeit in a slight different way. And I just go off script here. I shouldn't be undervalued the huge contribution that these two people have actually made to the Wellbeing Hub. It's been significant in actually helping and driving and working with other partners. So thank you both very much indeed. I'd just like to say the support is still there, and so what happens if shielding is reintroduced, which we hope it won't be. So I'd just like to pass over to Joe and Cllr just to give us a little bit of an insight of your world, if you like.
Yeah,
Joe?
thanks, Rob. I mean, perhaps if I start and then Cllr will come in. So the hub, the idea was that we bring different organisations to work together in a much more joined up way than we did before. And we were always looking for those opportunities, but actually COVID in that sense expedited organisations working together, and organisations like Kate and the Third Sector group and other organisations, and we don't want to lose any of that. So yes, it was designed for shielding, and we launched it quickly because of people who were shielding and also those who were vulnerable that weren't necessarily shielding and were struggling to cope for many other ways. What we found is by working together, by people not having to repeat their tough stories or sometimes, you know, their crises, we are able to get people help and support a lot more quickly than we may have before. You call 5, 6, 7 organisations to find what you want. You can call 1 or 2 people and you'll be able to reach the support. So the answer is we're carrying on working in that way with people that are want wellbeing support. We will be doing more proactive kind of outreach to try and support people to identify those with, you know, wellbeing needs that may not know or understand how to access the hub. And if there is shielding again, and we go into winter and there is a requirement to lock down again, which we all hope there won't be, or, you know, some people may still be in that vulnerable position, then we will start again with the calls to call people that are shielding. We'll work with other organisations already in your local area, like the Village Agents or Age UK. We have strong links with organisations across your communities, and we'll carry on and we'll keep going. So we'll all be there. But we change our focus slightly when there's a particular need around lockdown and shielding and, you know, things like emergency food parcels, and we change our focus slightly on maintaining well-being when we're not. So we're here to stay, I think, is the answer, Bob.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, Cllr. How are you?
Hello. I mean, Joe, you said it so eloquently. There's not a whole lot else for me to say other than it's to reinforce that level of commitment, isn't it, across funded partners, across Bath and North East Somerset, and with our trusted partners. And absolutely, it's a model we don't want to no longer have within our system. It works, it's appropriate, people get benefit from it, we get benefit from it as organisations, and the whole way in which we, even though we quickly did this, what's wonderful about this is we can shift and be agile and shift focus as and when is required. So even though we're not in that period of official shielding at the moment, we can step up and step down how we do that and how we mobilise partners and support across our community. And I think that's something to be celebrated, that we have a sustainable service that's able to do that. And one thing I've been doing with some of my council colleagues, with Sarah and Dave Dixon, who have led specifically on the emergency food and the shielding reporting, is actually talking to some of our local authority colleagues across the country about the lessons learned, because running a shielding programme in this way is actually a period of reflection of, well, about if we find ourselves in this situation again, what can we do better to best serve the most vulnerable and to best serve those individuals that are shielding. So please just note that even though we may not be in an official shielding regime as it stands at the moment, the work and the reflection continues to make sure that those lessons are learned and services are there to do exactly what they're intended to.
Thank you, Claire. I mean, I just want to pick up on something I think Joe mentioned about the village agents and that work out in the rural elements of it. Did you pick up that there were slightly different challenges between like the rural and the urban needs of our communities?
Yes, certainly. I mean, it was interesting. You could see in particular areas where there was such a strong community infrastructure that we didn't really get very many calls from those areas at all, and areas where there was perhaps less of a community infrastructure and local organisations already in place and doing things, we had more calls from those areas. So it did vary a bit in terms of what you already had in your areas, and the role of the hub isn't to take over all those existing organisations, it's to work with them and to kind of be the glue. We did find variations, and I think Kate would have said this in earlier, around particular kind of areas and groups of individuals who had more and increasing levels of anxiety. We've seen the trend for younger people with anxiety to continue to increase in calls. So there definitely have been trends, Rob, not so much in terms of geographical areas between rural and the city itself. We've obviously worked closely with the food banks, but by looking at the trends, we're able to then upskill our own staff. So I'm taking an example of mental health from Kate's team. By seeing the number of people calling in and young people calling in with anxiety in particular, we've then arranged more training from the mental health services for all the teams to upskill them and identifying, how to signpost, what services are available. So there certainly have been trends in need, but less so from kind of different geographical areas, I think.
So we've really turned out to be richer in our own knowledge of our communities, haven't we, on there? And I think one of the elements that I've picked up on, and it's a group that we actually haven't mentioned that deserves a huge amount of recognition, because it's those people that were fundamental in the support for a lot of our shielded residents, was actually our volunteers. I mean, at a drop of the hat, they came forward, they registered, and even now with the vaccination process, it's these volunteers that are manning the vaccination centres, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the volunteers have been, you're absolutely right, absolutely incredible. From, I think the third sector group managed to get one representative volunteer on every single street across Bath and North East Somerset, whether that be in the city centre or anywhere across Baines. And that made such a huge difference, because in other areas where they had to use a kind of generic NHS app, that didn't really link into anything at the back end. It was great and it was really good for those volunteers to be able to support, but it doesn't then link into your other local organisations. So we had an incredible voluntary response from volunteers, and they would then come back and say, well, actually, I'm a little bit worried about Jackie, or could I just discuss Jackie with somebody? I think we might need to get her some more help, or something like that. And that ability to then get that person some wraparound support, I'm sure helped a number of people before they came in really kind of dire straits. So I think you're absolutely right, Rob.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, I think obviously we've heard from all our speakers, so thank you very much on that one. I'm just having a quick look on the chat to see if there's any questions on there. There's certainly some good information coming up on the chat, which and there's some about the services that people like Bath Mind provide, like the breathing spaces when they're open, and also information about the 3SG and the wellbeing packs. I haven't seen any questions as such, and I don't know if there are any questions that that anybody's sent in there, or do you think we've covered it all? I'm quite happy to take anything if there's anything that we can help with, but I'm not seeing anything at the moment. So this is where I have to fill in time for about 5 minutes, do I? But no, I don't think there is anything. Nothing. Okay, well, I mean, if there isn't anything else that could come on there, I mean, you can always contact us. You can obviously contact us through the Wellbeing Hub as well, and the contact number for the Wellbeing Hub is 0300 247 0050. It is a service that will be going on into the future, because it isn't just going to be defined by the challenges that we have at the moment when we're coming out of COVID and dealing with the after effects of the pandemic. And hopefully it will become, I refer to it as the people's one-stop shop. I mean, we have a one-stop shop for the council for all the technical structural bits, but it's quite nice to have a one-stop shop for the people and their well-being. And without a doubt, we should be proud. We actually get lots of conversations and phone calls and communications from other parts of the country asking us how this has actually evolved and how we made it so successful. And I think one of the key factors is actually having the health element part of the conversation and part of the solution. So again, you know, well done to Virgin Care for stepping up on that part of it and working in partnership with the third sector groups and with the council. So thank you very much. Go a quick look on the chat.
Rob, sorry to interrupt. There is a question about those services, the shopping, particularly medication services and volunteering that ends at the end of June. And there's a question about how we will support those people who need to remain at home.
Yeah, well, I think the idea is that we will still do. Can I ask if Claire, because I think there was a question, wasn't there, Claire, I understood, that was being posed to us, that should something go pear-shaped and we go into another lockdown, which hopefully we won't, because I think everybody's doing an amazingly good job, how quickly you can actually mobilise and be effective again. And,
yes, let me come in there. Thank you, Kate, for bringing that up on the chat. That's really helpful. So we're aware of that, and it's something that James and I, so James Carlin leads with Kate, 3SG and the volunteers, and we're having some discussions between the volunteer strategy, and our services about how we do continue a level of support for that activity over the coming months. So no, it's not going to fall off of a cliff, but we are going to be looking at how we might need to make some modifications to that level of support, to continue to meet people's needs, but at the same time reflect the changing position of easement and what we're doing. So there will be more information coming out on that, and it's something very dear to our heart to make sure that information and that support requirement is clear to those that benefit from it the most.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I've just checked on there. There's no more questions on that. So really, it just leaves me to say that's all we have time. Well, we've got time for a bit more, but there isn't anything more to say now. So thank you very much. If you've missed anything and want to watch this back, you'll be able to watch this again on YouTube. If you search Bath Nest Council YouTube page, and it will be there listed in a few days' time. Please share this link with your families and friends, and hopefully there will be some value in it for those. So before we finish off, I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone out there for all the hard work they put in over the last year. We know how tough it is for everyone. We are so grateful to all our residents and all our contributions over the last year. Please continue to follow all the rules. social distancing, washing hands and covering face. Even when we go through the time where we've maybe had our 2 jabs or anything like this, our gift to everybody else is to actually look after them as well. So please follow those rules and let's all get through this as safely as we can. And on that note, thank you very much for watching, and I'll bid you a good afternoon.